The next form that we're going to work on is a cylinder. Lots of cylinders found in nature, tree trunks and people's legs and arms, all those can be based on cylinders. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of like we've been doing, give myself a size guidance. And I'm just going to go with about 2 inches because I want it to be about like this, so I have a little bit of room to show you something else. So you can eyeball this. You don't have to use a ruler if you don't want to. That's fine. But you might like the ruler to at least give you some straight up and down lines for the sides of your cylinder. And then you got to determine how much round you can see. So this is the cylinder that we are going to use. If I show it to you this way, the top is a perfect circle. But I want you to watch what happens to the top as we turn the cylinder sideways. Because when I set it out on the table, a couple of feet here in front of me, I'm going to be seeing it at an angle that's more like this. So what happens to the top? It becomes an oval. So when I set this out, I am going to visually use my pencil. I'm going to set this away from me, and I'm going to hold my pencil out at arm's length, and I'm going to basically use my thumb. I'm going to put the tip of my pencil where visually I'm going to close one eye and put the tip of the pencil where it hits one side of that oval, and then I'm going to use my thumb and I'm going to move it across until it hits where the other side of the oval goes. That gives me an idea of how wide, and then I can hold it across and do the same thing, and it gives me an idea of how big that oval is tall. So when I put this out here and I do this, I hold my hand out and I check my width versus my height. It is just a little bit more than half, again, as tall. So if I come over here and I say, okay, here is my width of that oval. So if I find my halfway point and I go a little bit less than half, this is where my top of my oval is going to be, and my bottom of my oval is going to be where my thumbnail was. So I kind of get this idea of just how much of the oval I can see. Ovals are actually harder to draw than what you think. So I usually take my time getting that oval shape how I want it. Once I have this established, the bottom is going to echo that. By the way, I did the same thing. I looked at how wide versus how tall, and it's just a smidge shorter, a little bit shorter than it is wide. So I'm going to put the bottom right in here, and I'm going to try very hard to duplicate the curve that I have here. So my light source has not changed positions. It's still sitting up above over on this one side. It's technically coming in about right at this angle right here. Because the cube was flat across the top and flat across the front, it has a little bit different effect, because what was essentially happening here is that this backside that you can't see was actually getting the most light. So we're going to take a look at two things. The top is going to be lighter than this side, but it's darker than this side. So the top is going to be a fairly even value. Again, keeping the strokes in the same direction, keeping them very short, that's going to help. And then we have, I've got a shadow that comes right at the front of the round. Slightly back angle because that light's coming in slightly from this side, and so it's not a hard angle towards the back, it's just sort of light. So kind of establish that. And right here at this base is where we're actually going to have the darkest of our shadows. Just like with the square, we're going to have the bounced light a little bit. So we get that darkest shadow right at the base where it meets the tabletop. But above it, and especially as it curves around the front, there is a little bit of a lighter, it's still a dark shadow, but it's a little bit lighter than what's happening at the base. And I try not to get too dark too fast, because you can always make it darker. It can be hard to make things lighter if you get them too dark. They don't like to erase evenly. So if we can and you'll notice on this one, instead of going straight up and down like I did on the flat plane of the top or the flat plane of the sphere, I am doing what they call cross contour shading, and it's because it is a rounded surface. I am taking my shading in kind of a round fashion around the object. So I'm taking this sort of mid-tone out about to the center front, which is where the curve comes around and begins to be curved away from the light. So from there to about in here, we are definitely getting more shadow than we're going to see on the left half. And again, take a look at my hand. I've got it, I'm holding this pencil way at the back. I've got it laid way over on its side. So I'm not using the tip of the pencil, I'm using kind of the side of the lead. And I'm going to darken up this side a little bit more all the way across it. And then as I come around to the other side, I want to make sure that I'm getting lighter. So I'm going to switch pencils, this time to a little bit lighter pencil. So I'm going to go back to that HB, which you guys should have in your set, I believe. You either have a B or an HB. Just a smidge lighter. I'm going to get super light with my touch, so way back at the back of the pencil. Still using the really short strokes. And still going kind of cross contour a little bit. So the base of this does get a little bit of a shadow just right under the edge. And the light is a little bit higher up on this side. So even though this side is getting more shadow, it's a little bit darker towards the bottom than it is towards the top. And now I'm going to darken up this right side a little bit with the darker one. So I'm going to go in with one of those darker pencils now. Choke up on it a little bit, closer to the pencil lead. And start bringing that around. So again, like I said before, our darkest shadow right here at the base, in the shadow. Get a little bit of that bounce light up in this area that's coming from your surface. And then, of course, we've got our shadow on the table to do. Right next to the base of the form, it's fairly sharp edged. And then as it gets further out from the form, it begins to get more blurry edged, more fuzzy looking. So the next question is, where do you use or where do you find cylinders? Well, how about your fingers? If I draw my fingers out and I just simply think about the cylinder shapes, and put those cylinders together, I've got fingers.